Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Blues, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say quickly thank you to everyone out there for making both shows your first listen, and a reminder that you can check out Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Blues 100% for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman, joined today by Josh Hyman of Locked On Blues ahead of this matchup on Wednesday night at the United Center. Hawks and Blues, always a fun matchup, regardless of where these two teams are at. And it's been a pretty eventful start, to say the least, for the St. Louis Blues. Josh, how are you doing? And how are you feeling now that the Blues have kind of rattled off three in a row here and at least eased the tension for a little bit?
Yeah. Well, to set the stage in case anyone somehow missed it, which if you're a Blues fan, you didn't miss it. And if you're a Blackhawks fan, you probably didn't miss it because what's more fun than laughing at your rival? Um, Blues started out 3-0. Everything was looking good. And then they proceeded to lose 8 in a row in regulation, which was obviously concerning. Then they had a game against San Jose, who was pretty bad. They finally got a win. And then they went into a weekend matchup against Vegas and Colorado, both on the road in that order, and somehow beat both of those teams. So, in another 3-game losing streak, if history is any indication, it means we're about to start another 8-game losing streak. But yeah, I mean, look, I said heading into the weekend that I would have been more than happy with the split in the games against Vegas and Colorado. Now, obviously, 3-game winning streak, it doesn't completely absolve the sins of the 8-game losing streak, but best case scenario, I suppose, after losing that many games in a row in that fashion. So, I mean, I'm optimistic. I think the next few weeks are going to be very telling into the Jekyll and Hyde we've seen of the Blues. We've seen them at their best, and we've seen them, oh boy, at their worst. So probably like a healthy medium, somewhere in between, is what I'm expecting over these next few weeks. But listen, I could have been in a lot worse mood right now if the Blues lost their last three. So, you know, staying afloat.
I feel you. And kind of like on the other end of the spectrum, the Blackhawks, they started 4-2-0, and people kind of just come to these conclusions, I feel like, so early. And it's just a reminder
Mm,
that we are 14 games into a season. And for St. Louis, I mean, it's very relative considering when they won the Stanley Cup in that season, midway through it, the worst team in the entire NHL, things can certainly change. And I expect we'll see more of the St. Louis Blues we've seen in their past three games than we did during that 8-game losing skid that you just referenced. But kind of talk to me, what went wrong during that 8-game losing streak, Josh? Like, what kind of plagued this team? I
what
noticed
what
they're
didn't go wrong? What didn't go
well,
wrong?
tell me about it. Was it just everything happening at once, literally?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it was like the one thing that I was saying was like, if the defense can be just okay and the goaltending can be good, the Blues will be fine. And then they went, "Are you sure?" Because the defense was just okay, the goaltending was good, and then the offense just forgot how to score for about 8 games. Um, and when they did score, they pretty much were like, "Oh my god, we scored. That means we can stop trying." It really just felt like an extremely disjointed effort. That's why I never was too. I mean, I don't want to say I was never too pessimistic. I have a video titled "The Blues, the worst team in the NHL," but at the end of the day, I was like, "There's no way they could be this bad," because it's like exactly what you said. It was like everything. It wasn't just like, "Oh yeah, their defense is really bad." No, it was like they couldn't hit the net to save their life. Their special teams was non-existent. They couldn't retain any sort of offensive possession. The goaltending was good, but not great. The defense was good, but not great. It was like nothing was above average for the St. Louis Blues. Every single aspect of their game was below what I expected. So I was like, even if like half these things get resolved, they're going to be a much better team than this. They started cleaning up the special teams a little bit. They started hitting the net more, which honestly I think is just one of the biggest things. It's when you hit the net, it's easier to obviously score goals. It's easier to retain possession, and they stopped turning the puck over so much. Um, they got to the front of the net a ton as well against a team like Colorado, who's one of the most difficult teams to get to the net too. So it really feels like night and day. Like if you watch the Blues in their last 3 games, specifically against Vegas and Colorado, compared to how they played in those 8-game in that 8-game losing streak, it was like exactly what I was saying. There's just this, they're just not playing how we know they can play. This sounds like such a basic answer, but it's true. It's not like Craig Berube had to go to the locker room and be like, here are the X's and O's. It's like, come on, guys, you're not this bad of a team. And they eventually kind of got everything to click. Jordan Binnington has been really, really good this year. The offense is finally getting it going. Jordan Kyrou, who's been under a tremendous microscope, has finally gotten it going. Robert Thomas has gotten it going. Ryan O'Reilly started off slow. He's picking it up a little bit. Colton Parayko had like one of the best games of his career last night against Colorado. So it really feels like it's everything that all the criticisms that have plagued them, not just this year, but in years prior, were extremely emphasized in that losing streak. And they kind of reversed those biggest ones. But all in all, it's just playing Blues hockey. Like that's all it took, was just sticking to what worked for them in the past, because they have the same roster that they had last year, pretty much, besides like David Perron and Billy Husso. So it really was as simple as just do what worked in the past. Don't try to force these extra passes. Don't try to pick the top corner. It's better to hit the goalie in the pads than hit the glass behind the net. So I'm looking forward to them continuing this momentum, because that 8-game losing streak was painful.
I think the Blackhawks had 2 or 3 8-game losing skids just last season, so I know how that feels. Well, when doing some research here on the Blues, I noticed you just talked about too, hitting the net has kind of been an issue. They're dead last in the NHL in goals per game right now. I'm sure the 8-game losing streak was probably a big reason why that's the case, but I'm curious, what's caused these struggles offensively? Because looking at this offense on paper, and especially what they were able to do last year when they played the Blackhawks too, the power play was just absolutely unstoppable. What's been clicking here in these last few games, if anything? And kind of talk to me about the top 6 line combinations, or I guess top 9, because St. Louis is a deep team. Talk to me about the line combinations that they're rolling with right now, or at least have been trying to get together here since they've been winning these past 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's a matter of the Blues being a little bit overconfident in their offensive ability early. I mean, they had 9 20-goal scorers last year, and 8 of those guys returned. And then you got, new guys at the helm, sort of, in Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, who kind of led the charge in the issues that I saw. More so Jordan Kyrou, just trying to be a little too dynamic, trying to create the perfect play, when in reality, if you're as skilled as Jordan Kyrou, you can kind of keep it simple and it still, looks dynamic and incredibly skillful, because that's kind of just who he is as a player. It really was just a matter of getting back to the basics and, creating simple offense, because the Blues have such deep offense that you don't have to rely on like your top line like a team like Boston does. And that isn't to like trash on Boston. The Boston has a scheme that's worked for years and years and years. It's, hey, we have Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, and Patrice Bergeron. When they're on the ice, we're gonna run the offense through them. When everyone else is on the ice, you just got to beat us then. And the Blues kind of have the ability to sort of do the opposite and say, we have, we don't really have one line or one group of guys that's going to completely overwhelm you, but we got 9 guys that can, outplay you if they're trying. And one thing that's really, really worked to get Ryan O'Reilly going, they paired him up with Brandon Saad, who was out of the lineup for a decent bit, whose impact was definitely felt, or the lack of impact was definitely felt. He's completely gotten O'Reilly going. And then Pavel Buchnevich, I think, has been the Blues' most consistent offensive player since he joined the team. Putting him with Robert Thomas has been a huge help. But they've really been juggling the lines. Jordan Kyrou is technically on the 3rd line right now, but he's still playing with Braden Shen and Ivan Barbashev, at least according to Daily Faceoff. And it's that flexibility in terms of saying, okay, this line isn't working. We're going to move you 2 lines up or 2 lines down, or we're going to move you to the wing. And it really is just a matter of getting to the groups that work. Like I said, O'Reilly and Saad, or like Thomas and Buchnevich, kind of like these dynamic duos, Shen and Kyrou, and they kind of rotate everybody else. It's just a matter of finding players that, are comfortable playing with one another and building off of that chemistry. I think O'Reilly had his best game of the season last night, and a big part of that was due to playing with Brendan Saad. So hopefully they found something that works, but when they inevitably start to struggle a little bit again, they have the freedom to mix up those lines with such deep offensive abilities. 8 guys that scored 20 goals last year. It's not a fluke. So you can play with your lines a lot, and the Blues did that. And finally, they found something that clicked.
The Blackhawks are actually Blackhawks coach Luke Richardson has been jumbling up his forward lines a lot here recently as well. And you kind of mentioned those duos. the Blackhawks have had the same thing with Max Domi and Patrick Kane. We've seen Jonathan Toews and Taylor Radish together. They've been mixing and matching as well, so interesting to hear that. My last question I have for you, Josh, before I kind of flip things over, a two-parter. Is Jordan Binnington, do you know, is expected to get the start, or are you guessing that he's getting the start tomorrow? I
I
know
would
it's kind of
assume
a
so.
shot in the dark at this point, but
I would assume so. It could just be one of those scheduled, like, I know it's not a back-to-back or anything. Um, it could just be one of those scheduled. Oh no, they do have a back-to-back actually. Interestingly enough, they play Washington the next night, so it could, if they go with Grice first, I wouldn't be surprised, but it really is dependent on what they decide there. I could see Bennington getting the start, but if they wanted to save him for the, no offense, slightly higher powered Washington Capitals,
I was thinking it.
I could see that
I
as
wasn't gonna
well.
say it. I wasn't gonna say it, but I was definitely thinking it. But talk to me
Yeah.
real quick about Rice. Obviously, the Blues bring him in as their backup this season. Bennington's going to be the guy. You said you've liked what you've seen out of Bennington. What have you thought of
Yeah.
Grice in the backup spot so far? If he does get the start, just in case.
Grice has been good. He's not gotten a whole lot of support. His goals against looks a little ugly, and his save percentage looks a little ugly, but he's made a lot of saves and hasn't gotten much offensive support at all. He hasn't stolen a game yet, or been elite per se in a game yet. I think he did, although he did make like the franchise record for saves in a debut for a Blues goaltender. I think they lost like maybe like 40 something saves. Um, so he's been just as good as they need him to be. I always say like the mark of a above average goalie is they give you a chance to win the game, and then the mark of an elite goalie is they're going to win the game even if you deserve to lose it. Like the elite goalies of the world, they'll pitch you a shutout or let up one goal in a game where you get doubled up in shots. That's not Thomas Grice's game, and that's okay. He's going to make 25 out of 27 saves, 30 out of 3 saves, and just give you a chance to win the game. And I think there's only been a game or two where he's kind of, not even a game or two, he's only played a few games, but there's been a game or so where he's been a little poor. But other than that, it's just been like, yeah, he's a backup goalie. He's given up 2 or 3 goals, but he's not giving up huge momentum killer goals. Just the Blues haven't been scoring for him. It's going to be interesting to see if the offense is going and Grice gets to start. What'll that be like? Because the Blues have a tendency of playing very different hockey in front of their backup versus their starter. So it'll be interesting to see if when they're playing quote unquote good hockey, does that manifest itself? Because at this point, we've only really seen the both of them when the Blues are playing their worst. So it's not like one goalie's gotten better play. They've both gotten pretty poor play in front of them, with Thomas Grice getting the worst of it, but that's because he's gotten less starts. So I like what I've seen out of him. I think overall, if the Blues continue to play good hockey, he'll do just what he needs to do and win more games than he loses. Isn't going to steal you any games, like I said, but he isn't exactly a pushover either. So I'm happy with him as the backup so far, mostly because Binnington has been more than good enough in the starter role. If Binnington has his annual, I forget how to be a starting goalie, I need my backup to come in and play, then the Blues are in trouble, because that's not who Thomas Grice is. But so far, Jordan Binnington has shown no signs of needing that like he has in years past. So fingers crossed there.
Well, Josh, I appreciate all that insight on the Blues ahead of this matchup on Wednesday night. Coming up in just a minute, I will turn it over to you to ask me some questions on the Chicago Blackhawks. But first, real quick here, folks, I need to talk to you all about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all pro and college sports betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all of the latest developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts on whatever game you want to place a wager on. BetOnline is also your continued source for all sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and game scores. It's both the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including the MLB, NCAA, NHL, of course, NBA, MMA, boxing, golf, whatever you want to bet on, you can find it at betonline.net. So head on over to the website today, or you can also go and download the mobile app to learn more about all of the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, back here for segment 2. Turning it over now to Josh to ask some questions about the Blackhawks ahead of this matchup. The floor is yours, my guy.
Yeah, so I got the Blackhawks stats page pulled up, and the first one that kind of sticks out to me is, it seems like you got a bit of a goaltender by committee situation going on. I see you got Stalock, Mrazek, and Soderblom, all with 6, 5, and 4 starts respectively. Mrazek struggling pretty heavily more than the others. Was that due to injury, or are you guys kind of just still figuring that out? What's the situation there, and who should the Blues expect to see in net, and how have they been playing?
The Blackhawks goaltender situation, not even just at the NHL level, even down in Rockford too. It's just been injuries everywhere. It's been crazy. Alex Stalock's currently on injured reserve with a
Gotcha.
concussion. Stalock's in concussion protocol, excuse me. Mrazek just returned from injured reserve from a groin injury. That's, of course,
Gotcha.
what kind of plagued him the last few years. And ideally, they'd love to have Arvid Soderblom, who's probably their top goalie prospect. Ideally, they brought in Stalock and Mrazek to let Soderblom kind of be the guy in the AHL and to get consistent action down there. But they just kind of have had their hand forced due to injuries. So Soderblom's been up here for the past couple of weeks now, and he's been really solid for being only 23 years old. He's very poised, doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He kind of has a problem with, I think he doesn't know how to play the puck very well at all. It seems like every time he skates out of his net, I'm about to have a heart attack, but he's been really good, and he's the one that actually is in line to get the start against the Blues. So it's going to be a tough test
Wonderful.
for him, his first kind of look at this little division rivalry. But hey, he's been challenged a lot in his couple of starts that he's made this season, and he's been spectacular. So honestly, he's probably the best goalie the Blackhawks have right now. But obviously, being in this full-blown rebuild, they can afford to be mega patient with all of their prospects
Mm.
right now. So not with just Soderblom, a lot of guys we've seen could be up in the NHL maybe right now, but they'd rather have them in Rockford getting all of those opportunities. So that's why Soderblom is up right now. And yeah, it looks like he's going to be the one to get the start for the Hawks tomorrow, Josh.
Fun. The Blues love to make young, inexperienced goalies look like the second coming of Dominic Hasek. So that'll be fun. Looking at the stat sheet, I mean, there's one big elephant in the room. Jonathan Toews, a lot of people, myself included, kind of thought he was past his prime, and he now has 7 goals in 15 games, pretty much double your next highest goal scorer. Is that a fluke, or is Toews back for one more year before he gets traded at the deadline? Just kidding.
He's gonna get dealt. If I had to guess one way or the other, especially if he's playing like this, like I
Yeah,
know the
I
Blackhawks.
was I was surprised to see that. He's like almost up to his goal total from last year. He had like 12 last year, I think.
Yes, he didn't score a
Yeah,
goal until his 25th game last year. It was
yeah, and he's got 7 already.
Yeah, it was just a brutal year all in all for Jonathan Toews. He was really kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, returning from that illness, and, he was just away
Mm.
from the game for so long. It was pretty obvious that he just wasn't at that speed yet, and in the second half of last season, we definitely saw some more signs that this was possible, but I don't think anyone expected Jonathan Toews to be, like a point per game guy right now, and I think he's one of the best, if not the best in the NHL at the faceoff dot too. He's winning like 62% of his faceoffs. Should be an interesting matchup between he and Ryan O'Reilly, notoriously another one of the top faceoff men.
64%. My
Yeah,
goodness.
Taze is rattling them all. So all aspects of his game right now have really been phenomenal. And you know what? I feel like maybe just the biggest difference is the finished product. Like pucks are going in for him this year, and it just didn't feel like it was happening last year. And his shooting percentage is up right now, but it just feels like he finally has that confidence and that focus and awareness that he has what it takes still to be able to do this. I feel like maybe there were times last year where he wasn't even sure himself if he was still capable of that. So I feel like this has been a big proving point to not only just, the rest of the NHL, but also to Jonathan Toews that, hey, I could still be a two-way impact player like I was, 5, 6 years ago. And it's been really fun to see. He's been having a lot of fun, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about at the beginning of the season in our last crossover how we kind of wanted to hope that Blues and Blackhawks got fun again. And the Black contending team when the Blues play season, and maybe the Blues won't even be a contending team. Who knows? But I think the biggest part of that was like Taves and Kane versus the Blues superstars, and a bit of a changing of the guard for the Blues. No Petrangelo, the guys that made that iconic. No Keith for the Blackhawks, but I feel like the fundamental core pieces. Tarasenko, Kane, Toews, they're still there. So with both of those guys, seeming like they're still at the peak of their game, it's going to be a fun game. Couple fun matchups this season. I'm hoping the Blues are at their best, and I'm hoping to play a team like the Blackhawks will make them, elevate to that level because they definitely need to continue that momentum. But it should be a really fun game. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm super stoked, and the Blues have really gotten the best of the Blackhawks the last 3 or 4 years. It's felt like it hasn't even been a rivalry. The Blues have just been
No,
taking it to the
it's been
Hawks.
great.
Yeah, I'm glad you've been able to enjoy it. It's been miserable for me. But this actually does feel like the bunch that, I'm not going to go and say they're going to win this game, but I certainly expect them to be competitive. They've been competitive basically every night so far this season. And we've seen it against Edmonton. They beat, granted, early on in the season, they beat the Florida Panthers. They've hung in there. That's kind of been the niche of this Blackhawks team. They've rolled with the punches, and they've found ways to make things interesting late. So hopefully this will be the team that at least makes it more of a competitive matchup here in the first meeting between these two teams this season tomorrow night. But Josh, before we wrap things up, why don't we get into some predictions and some keys to victory, if that sounds good to you?
Yes, sir. Love to do that.
Awesome. But first, sorry to tease the listeners out there. I do have to get another quick ad read in. I got to talk to you all real quick about SimpliSafe because the numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their homes. And you don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. And I know because I use SimpliSafe in my own home. And here are some of my favorite things about it. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, along with hazard sensors that will instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. You can also go and customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes by checking out simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. And you can also save another 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan. Again, all you have to do is go and visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, back here for segment 3. Apologies for that little teaser there before this final segment to wrap up the show. Getting into some predictions and some kind of keys to victory, last little things ahead of this matchup between the Blackhawks and Blues. Josh, if you got any keys you think for St. Louis to kind of keep this rolling in this first matchup between these two teams, what do you think they are? And what do you got for a final prediction for me?
Yeah, I mean, the Blues have definitely found success over the last 3 games. But I think a big thing to them is staying grounded and kind of remembering, hey, we just lost 8 games and we know how easy it is to lose focus for, on one little thing. And then it's pretty obvious how that can snowball into an 8-game regulation losing streak, worst in franchise history. I've talked a lot, not just on this episode, but in general about just keeping things simple for the Blues offense. Sticking with what works, trusting the guys in your line, but also trusting yourself when to shoot, when to pass, blah blah blah. And I think that's really what it comes down to is just sticking with what works. Especially against a team like Chicago, that should motivate something in these guys. The energy in the arena is going to be different. It's going to feel like a playoff game in there. A lot of the players on the team are going to have a little bit of that personal gripe, whether it be Saad, who maybe wants to score against his former club, or any of the Blues members who have some good memories from the rivalry that give them a little bit of extra motivation. So it's about sticking with not just what's worked against teams this year, but what's worked against the Blackhawks in the past. Because like you said, it's kind of been pretty one-sided in years past. And it's the same Blues team the Blackhawks have been seeing for a year or so now. And the Blues know that works last year pretty handedly. So it's about sticking to that. And I think if guys like Brendan Saad and Ryan O'Reilly can do their thing, well, Jordan Kyrou continues to elevate, and he's yet to have that big game. He's building up to it. And if some of his line mates could finish the pass that he's been setting up, he's due for a couple 3-4 point nights. Plus, depending on who starts in net, Binnington, Greiss, it's about putting a good performance in front of them. One of the Blues' biggest issues is they just don't support their goalie, and by the end of the game, it just weighs on them. When you see these 5-goal games for opponents, it's because the goalies kept the Blues in it for only so long. So put a good strong performance in front of whoever's in net. work on those dynamic duos on offense. If Jordan Kyrou is able to get going, like I said, and continue to ascend, it's going to be a tough night for the Blackhawks because he likes scoring against the Blackhawks. I'm pretty sure. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like him, Tarasenko, especially Tarasenko loves
Don't
scoring
even
against the
talk to me about
Blackhawks.
Tarasenko. It's like I
Oh
have
my
to bet
god.
anytime goal scorer because it just happens every game. I swear to God.
Yeah, he likes scoring against the Blackhawks. Like it's a perfect opportunity to do exactly what I've been saying and just trust yourself. I feel like that's the biggest thing the Blues have been struggling with is overthinking a little bit too much, making an extra pass when you don't need to, thinking a little bit too much about your shot and then firing it wide versus going for a rebound. If there's anything that can motivate them to stick to the basics, play hard, and play consistent, special teams. It sounds so generic. I sound like I'm a coach trying not to give anything away to the media, but it's true. It's because so much went wrong for the Blues in their 8-game losing streak that it's like the solution is so easy. It's like, hey, just don't do any of that. And it really kind of almost feels like they started the season off fresh again in those 3 wins because it's like you have to completely flush everything that happened before that. I don't care that they won 3 games; those don't count either because whatever you were doing over those 11 games, it wasn't right. So it's those important things, the little things. That's all it is. The Blackhawks aren't a team like Colorado or Tampa where you have to play perfect hockey and a perfect scheme to beat this juggernaut. No, it's a team that you're better than on paper. That if you go out, play consistent, don't take dumb penalties, and when you do, play good on the penalty kill. If you play right, you'll win. If you're the St. Louis Blues, that's it. Prediction. I'm feeling a big scoring night. I'm feeling this might be a hot take. I'm feeling 6 goals from the Blues.
Heater.
But yeah, they're due. They're
Is it
due to
lopsided? Is
just.
it going to be lopsided or is it going to be a close shootout?
That's the thing. I don't know because I feel like they're due to finally have everything click offensively. They've had some good offensive games here and there, but they've yet to have one of the games that they had, 6 or 7 of last year where they just could not be stopped. They look at the Harlem Globetrotters out there. They haven't had that yet this season. I feel like they're building to it. And a team like Chicago, energy is going to be crazy. Players are going to be extra motivated. Players know that they lost a bunch of games in a row. Extra motivation. If everything clicks, watch out. I feel like it could be a big offensive performance. Now, could that come with a bit of a lack of attention on the defensive end? Yeah. Give me, let's be crazy. Give me 6-4. 6-4 Blues.
I like it. I think I'm going to be there, so I'd love to see a 10-goal game. Even
Ooh.
if the Blackhawks don't win, I'm all in for that. But on my side of things, I have a couple of keys that I have. Offensively, the Blackhawks have been dog water for the past week and a half. They have 4 goals in their last 4 games total. They've been shut out twice during that stretch. And I think it starts with Patrick Kane in that top line. And look, this is just the reality of the situation. The Blackhawks, I know they did it early on in the year, but they're probably not going to win many games when Patrick Kane's held off the score sheet this season. That's just not a recipe for success for them. And he's been held off the score sheet in 4 of his last 5. So he needs to get going. Max Domi needs to play better alongside him. I thought Domi had a couple of really good opportunities in their last game against the Hurricanes. One of them hit the post. So hopefully that top line can kind of set the momentum and get things going for a struggling Blackhawks offense going into this one. And another one is the penalty kill. I kind of hinted at this earlier, but the Blues power play, I know David Perron's gone, and he was a huge part of their success against the Blackhawks last year. It just feels like the Blues power play has diced the Blackhawks PK for a couple years now. I remember even in the preseason, it was like I think a 7-1 Blues win, 6-1 Blues win in the preseason. They had 4 power play goals. It was like, oh my goodness, is this a bad dream that just happens 4 times a year? I think it's really important for the Blackhawks PK to shut the door down on the Blues power play. And the Hawks PK has been interesting. It feels like whenever they're good, they're really good. They had another solid night against Carolina on Tuesday, good against Anaheim, but then when they're bad, they're terrible. Gave up 3 power play goals to Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Colorado already this season. So have the PK be solid, and I think that will go a long way for the Blackhawks. As far as my final prediction, now you got me feeling some type of way, Josh. I'm hoping for goals now. I'm going to go toughie. I am going to go 5-4 Blues in overtime.
Okay.
I think the Blackhawks
Okay.
have the ability to keep this close. And look, losing isn't the end of the world. I know there's some fans out there who get upset when your team doesn't win every game. It's like the Chicago Bears. Look, Justin Fields is looking great. We don't want to win. That's the foundation. It's okay to not win for this Blackhawks team. So even as much as it sucks losing to St. Louis, all we really should care about, Blackhawks fans, is being competitive. And I think they can do that against this Blues team. So that's what I'm looking for. And hey, look, if my prediction's wrong, that means the Blackhawks won. So it's going to be a win-win for me. But as you mentioned earlier, Josh, I'm stoked for this matchup. Always fun when these two teams battle together. And just want to say thank you for squeezing this in. I know you got to get on out of here.
No worries. Just for clarity's sake, I looked up most goals scored against the Blackhawks by active Blues players. Vladimir Tarasenko has played 32 career games against the Blackhawks. How many goals do you think he has in those
32? Is that just regular season, or is that regular and post? Probably just regular season, I'd guess, if you're looking it up.
It doesn't say, but yeah, 32 feels like too little.
I'm going to guess 26.
26? You're a little generous. He's got 20 goals and 12 assists in 32 games against the Blackhawks. O'Reilly's next with 13. Schen's got 7. Buchnevich with 4 goals in 9 games against the Blackhawks.
Yeah,
Kyrou, only 2 goals. He's gotta step it up. Come on, Jordan. But yeah, it's fun. Robert Bortuzzo, 2 goals against the Blackhawks in his career. I feel like he only has like 10 career goals. So
may have to sprinkle something on the DraftKings with that knowledge.
Dude, if Robert Bortuzzo, I every single night I lay a note under my pillow that says, please let Robert Bortuzzo score. Every single night I sleep on that. It doesn't work, but when he does, the bench goes crazy. You think he just scored like Game 7 overtime winner Stanley Cup final. So if that happens against the Blackhawks, nonetheless, oh man.
That's what the Blackhawks would do if Jack Johnson scores, because he notoriously got 1 in like his last 200 games. And of course, it came against the Blackhawks. So that's how things go here in Chicago. But anyways, Josh, I'll let you get on out of here. Thank you again for making the time to get this in. And thank you to everyone out there for listening to this crossover. Make sure, if you're not already, to go and show some support to both Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Blues. It's 100% for free wherever you want to check it out. And also make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today. Make that your second listen after this, folks. It's available on this app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and it will provide you the biggest stories in sports with insight that only Locked On can provide. So make sure to make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Once again, I'm Jack Bushman from Locked On Blackhawks, Josh Hyman from Locked On Blues. Thank you, everyone, again. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.